Alright, hello. Welcome everybody to my presentation. This is climate change and its impacts on RPTS. And yeah, let's get into it. So climate change, what is it? Now, some of you may have heard of it. Some of you may know the other name that was used for it for a long time, which was global warming. But it has been found that it's not just warming, it is a complete change of the climate system. Now, as it says, climate change is a change in global or regional climate patterns. In particular, it's a change that has occurred since the late 20th century and onward due to increased atmospheric carbon dioxide produced by burning of fossil fuels. Basically, the gist of climate change is Earth's climate is ever-changing, but our actions have sped that change up. Measurable signs of climate change are higher temperatures, which have led to more droughts, more wild and more unusual weather patterns, as well as a change in rain and snow patterns. There's been a small and slight rise in sea level over the years, and the ocean is getting warmer and more acidic as time goes on, as well as the melting of sea ice and glaciers, and the sped up melt of snowpack and permafrost that is now melting. The two main ones that we are going to focus on are the two with dashes next to them, higher temperatures and rising sea level. First up is higher temperatures. Greenhouse gases are trapping more heat in the Earth's atmosphere by not allowing rays reflected off the Earth to fully leave the atmosphere. So instead of the sunlight hitting the Earth, some of it being absorbed and some of it being reflected back, it's trapping that in our atmosphere and holding that heat in, which is causing an average temperature to rise all over the world. At the current rate of greenhouse gas emissions and our current rate of temperature increase, we are expected to increase between 4 and 12 degrees Fahrenheit by the year 2100. And if we are able to lower our CO2 emissions, we should only see a 2 to 5 degree increase. Here's a graph showing the average temperatures over time from the 1850s to 2021. And this is following 5 different measurement systems that have been in place off and on for the years, and it shows about a 1 degree increase in average global temperature. Here is another graph showing this, and this is a little bit easier to see the just how much it's increased in the last couple years. As the 1980s, that decade was the warmest decade on time, and then the 90s are the new warmest decade, and then the 2000s, the new warmest decade, the 2010s, the new warmest decade. It just keeps increasing, which is an alarming pattern. And here is what I believe is the longest lasting temperature record from the early 1650s to current day. And it is the Central England temperature, and it's in degrees Celsius. It shows on average how hot that year was. And you can see there are some spikes along the way as in the 1700s. But the early 2000s are easily the highest part on the graph, and it's just only increasing since then. Rising oceans. Rising global temperature is directly affecting the ocean levels. As the temperature increases, more glaciers and ice sheets begin melting, which is dumping all this water that's been sitting on land back into the ocean, which is causing it to rise. And also, as the temperature increases, the water temperature increases, and as the temperature of water increases, it expands. And the groundwater pumping is also causing sea levels to increase, but not nearly as much as the other two, as it usually it gets included with the melting of glaciers and ice. Here you can see on this, and for a long time, thermal expansion, which is the expanding of water due to heat, was at the same level as meltwater, which is the ice and glaciers melting. But in recent years, meltwater has started to rapidly increase. It adds 2 times the amount of water to the oceans as thermal expansion does. But you can see, and along this graph, we're just increasing. The ocean levels keep going up, not showing any sign of stopping. In fact, it's actually accelerating as time goes on. Here you can see, this is a projection of what possibly could happen if greenhouse gas emissions are either completely stopped or stay at a very low level, or they continue at the current level, or of course they go to some extremity and we don't know. As of right now, the estimated high, and this is all current ocean levels compared to what they could be in 2100. The highest that we would probably see would be around 8.5 feet of sea level rise, although that could change and that could increase as time goes on. And the minimum is assumed to be about a foot. At the very least, we're expected to get a foot of rise in the next 100 years. So impacts that these changes have. Number one, higher average temperatures, droughts, extreme droughts. Rivers are drying up, lakes are drying up, water is becoming scarcer and scarcer. And this is directly affecting a lot of industries, specifically boating and any lakes around. If they dry up, you can't swim in a lake. And also the higher average temperatures are causing earlier seasons in the year to be hotter than they usually are. And this has caused some problems in certain parts of the world. Another one with the melting and shrinking of glaciers. As you can see in these photos, there were once glaciers in this area, and they are all gone. And they're not going to come back unless we go through like another massive freezing process. So not only can you not go visit the glaciers, all that water is now in the ocean, which has raised the sea level. And finally, rising sea levels, increase in ocean temps, and also increase in ocean CO2 levels. As the CO2 levels in the atmosphere increase, they also increase in the ocean. And that increases the acidity of the ocean. And while the ocean still isn't considered acidic, it has a pH of 8.1, give or take, but it is slowly becoming more and more acidic as time goes on. The rise in sea level has seen a major increase in flooding. And that is not only flooding that comes with like storm surges and other weather-related events, but also nuisance flooding, which is also known as sunny day flooding, which is flooding due to tidal changes, where the tide going in and out is enough to flood areas because they're so low-lying now, and the water level is so high. And that has actually been one of the bigger problems. As you can see in like that street in the bottom corner, like that could flood off and on multiple times a day due to tidal changes. The sea level changes and the temperature has also caused major changing in rain and snow patterns, and also has caused wilder weather, as we said earlier. This wilder weather is kind of a bad name for it, because it not only creates more unusual and unseen weather, but it also has amplified the power of natural disasters, and we're getting a lot more powerful hurricanes and tornadoes. And here's some direct impacts that is causing to Parks and Rec. The increase in temperature has caused changes in the travel season and when you can and can't go to certain places. Droughts are affecting rivers and lakes, and specifically like river cruises and boat tours. The more powerful and more common natural disasters are causing areas that are usually safe to be a little bit more dangerous. And flooding of areas, of course, renders it completely unusable. And the premature melting of snowpacks has caused problems in some areas. So, current solutions that the industry has in place right now, with changing of travel seasons due to temperature, they're simply just moving when you would travel there. You move the travel season to better coincide with the weather that you would want there in that location for the season that you have. So, if it's getting hotter in spring, you push that season forward, so you're going like late winter, early spring. And if it's too cold in the winter, you just come in fall or go early spring. That's one solution to that problem that they found. Droughts have been affecting river cruises, especially on the research that I read was on the Rhine and the Danube River, where companies were having problems where they couldn't get to Budapest. So they would have to dock earlier and then bus people in and pay for their hotel and meals and excursions while they're there, which is probably rough on the company's dollar, but at least they're finding a way to get around this problem. With more common and more powerful natural disasters, they're using more storm-resistant materials and planning, just thinking a little bit farther ahead when building hotels or rebuilding hotels in areas that are prone to them. With flooding of areas, they are now building farther back from the ocean and at higher elevations, just thinking ahead and preparing for what is to come. And one of the more interesting ones is ski resorts have turned to using snowmaking machines and snowblowers to keep the slopes snowy later in the season, where people expect there to be snow on the mountain, but because it was getting so warm, it was all melting. So now they have to do this, which is cutting deeply into their budget from all the research we've read. And permanent solutions. As of right now, there are no permanent solutions to climate change. This is an ever-evolving problem. We truly don't understand it fully. Right now, the best that we can do is work to lower our carbon footprint and lower our emissions as an industry, and plan for the worst and hope for the best is all you can say. So thank you for your time. I hope you enjoyed this presentation, and this has been Climate Change's Effect on Parks and Rec. Thank you.